What's going on, boys? It's Keg from Rum Pure Bets to break down UFC 258, the main card at least. So I'm going to pull the odds up for us, see what we got going on. Obviously, the Bobby Green-Jim Miller fight gets scrapped. Bobby Green passes out backstage before the weigh-ins. That goes out the window. I think what was supposed to be the future prelim and Ricky Simone, Brian Kelleher will now be the first fight on the main card for the pay-per-view. So, obviously, our guy Joey just got done taping with UFC fighter Sasha Palatnikov. Did a nice video over there. Joey's got a Ricky Simone, Brian Kelleher fight pick on the spreadsheet. So I'm really not going to go deep into it, just general thoughts. As far as I'm concerned, really, I think that the fight will probably be closer than the odds represent. I mean, right now we're looking at Brian Kelleher plus 235, Ricky Simone minus 290. I do think that Brian Kelleher struggles in fights where he's not the best athlete, and he's not going to be the best athlete here for sure. So I don't know how Kelleher is going to deal with the pace and that relentless wrestling that Ricky Simone puts on his opponents. But all that said, Brian Kelleher can crack, man. And he has 2 or 3 submissions that he's really comfortable with and that he gets off pretty regularly in the right situation on most opponents. So I think if you add in the fact that as good of a pace that Simone can set and how unforgiving that his wrestling has been at times, we've still seen Ricky Simone get stopped before. So it's easily possible. Look no further than that Uriah Faber fight. So for me, it's probably a dog or pass spot. And that's all I'm probably going to say about it. Dog or pass for me. Joey's got a pick on the spreadsheet for this fight for all our Rum Pure Bet subscribers. Check that out. If you're not a member of the website, you should be. Take the shot. Second fight, Maki Pitolo, Julian Marquez. I think this has the potential to be fight of the night, and it also has the potential to be a giant shit show of a mess. I've gone back and forth on this fight for a few days now, and where I've pretty much landed is here. I think that Pitolo at plus 140 can be intriguing only because Marquez is coming off a super long layoff due to a really rare injury that he suffered a while back. Now, if Julian Marquez was coming into the fight off a regular circuit of like health, training, a fight camp, I probably would have pulled the trigger on Julian Marquez because Maki Pitolo doesn't really impress me at all. And even though Marquez is crazy wild at times, he has a ton of power. And he's a fighter that's got a lot of heart. And he also has a really underrated ground game that people don't normally see because he's normally swinging to put people's heads into the 4th row. But what worries me is his stamina coming off the long layoff. I do think he's just way too big and powerful. And I think that he gets the win off Pitolo in the end. But I can't lay the minus 160 on somebody that I have to worry about in terms of a gas tank. Now, if Saturday night comes and the line continues to go down, we see Marquez in that minus 125 range, then I might take the shot. But short of that, I'm going to avoid the fight until I see the price that I want. Maybe we see something live if the first round is close and the books think that Pitolo took the round. The line's going to drop. If that happens, there could be a spot to hop on Julian Marquez, but right now, I'm gonna pass as far as making a personal bet on it. But if you're asking me who do I think wins the fight, I think Julian Marquez should win the fight because I'm I'm just not really impressed with Maki Pitolo at all. Now, the line was going down for most of the week. I saw it get down to around minus 160, but now you're starting to see a little buyback. Minus 172, minus 177 at another book. So this line could be heading back up to where it's totally out of range for me to take a shot. And if that's the case, the only thing you could do is look for a potential live spot, because I'm just not going to pull the trigger on Julian Marquez off the long layoff at that price. All right, next fight, Kelvin Gastelum, Ian Heinisch. You know, I never really thought I would say this, but this might be like literally a must-win fight for Kelvin Gastelum. He's in a put up or shut up spot now. 4 years ago, would you ever thought Kelvin Gastelum would be in a put up or shut up spot? No. He was in the fight of the year a couple of years back with Izzy. You know, it's a tough one to call. He steps into the cage, a loser of 4 of his last 6 fights, including 3 straight losses. He lost to Izzy. He lost to, I want to say, Darren Till. And obviously, he lost the last fight against the Joker, Jack Hermanson, quick, too. So needless to say, Kelvin needs this fight badly. Or who knows, man, he could get cut from the roster at this point. Like, it's dire straits for Kelvin. Right now, the line sits Kelvin minus 235, Ian Heinisch plus 195. So Gastelum is going to take on Ian Heinisch, wrestle boxer. And the first thing that catches my eye is Kelvin Gastelum hasn't won a fight against a younger, up-and-coming fighter in almost 7 years. If you take a look at his last 6 wins, Jacare, Michael Bisping, Tim Kennedy, Big Rig Johnny Hendricks, Nate Marquardt, and Jake Ellenberger. They're all dinosaurs, all of them, right? Way past their prime when he fought them. Now he takes on a kid just over 30 in Ian Heinisch. He's hungry. He would love to pick up a win against a known quantity in Kelvin Gastelum. Now, we did back Ian Heinisch in his last fight against Gerald Meerschaert. We got the chicken there. And, I was tempted to come right back with Ian Heinisch at this price because he's like almost plus $2. But what's keeping me from pulling the trigger on Heinisch is I think stylistically, Kelvin Gastelum has a clear advantage. And that's what's keeping me away from taking the shot on Ian Heinisch. Now, Heinisch, he's only winning fights when he can consistently control the fight with his wrestling, right? And when he uses his top control to win rounds. Now, that's Ian Heinisch's MO. I'm just not sure he's going to be able to do that against Kelvin Gastelum. Kelvin is incredibly hard to get to the ground. He's even harder to keep on the ground. And Ian Heinisch excels in scrambles where he does a really good job of finding somebody's chin. But I think that Kelvin Gastelum is even better in scrambles, even better at hitting the button coming off the break. So it just doesn't seem like the spot where you would back Ian Heinisch, even though he's a nice price at plus 200. And the last thing is Ian Heinisch at his best is when the fight is brought to him, right? That's where he usually is going to be able to find his takedowns under the punches of fighters that pressure him coming in towards him, right? Now, that's not going to happen in this fight. Gastelum will not end up dictating the pace in this fight. Why? Because Gastelum doesn't ever pressure anybody, and he never dictates the pace in any fight he's in. So in the end, even though I want to take the shot on Ian Heinisch, I just don't think that it favors him stylistically. Add that on top of the fact that Gastelum might be fighting for his career on Saturday, and it makes me think that he's the right side. Now, all that being said, I'll pick Gastelum to win the fight, but in no way am I telling anybody to lay minus 235 on Kelvin Gastelum. I think it's a dog or pass spot. If you want to throw a half unit on Ian Heinisch at good odds against a guy that's lost 4 out of his last 6 fights, I don't mind that. But you just can't back Kelvin Gastelum in the shape that we've seen him in these last 6 fights. There's just no way that you can lay that kind of chalk on him. So I'll pick him to win the fight, but definitely a dog or pass spot for sure. All right, co-main event. Alexa Grasso, Macy Barber. Right now, Alexa Grasso, the slight favorite, minus 130. Macy Barber, plus 108. Those odds have gone back and forth, but they've basically somewhere been around that range for most of the week. This fight it's a very tough fight to call. Macy Barber, who clearly is on the UFC hype machine, for sure, was just borderline embarrassed against my arch rival, some might say, arch nemesis, Roxanne, the librarian, happy warrior, Modafferi, right? Now, she has a built-in excuse, though, because she was hurt in that fight. I think she tore her ACL. I'm not sure. Pretty sure she tore a ligament in her leg. But before her leg shit the bed, she was getting beat by the librarian, which is alarming, right? Now, the issue with Macy Barber is she has a world of potential. She can be great in this sport, but she's incredibly raw. And when I say raw, man, I mean as raw as we've seen somebody in a long time that has this much talent and this much potential. So the fight comes down to probably one thing. She has no chance to outbox Alexa Grasso. Even though, listen, Barber has a huge power advantage in her hands. We know that. But she has no technique. She has no form. And she's nowhere near as polished and consistent on the feet as Alexa Grasso, right? But what Macy Barber does have in spades is a huge advantage in power, in strength, and just natural athleticism, right? She's going to most likely want to get the fight to the ground because she's got the strength to pick Alexa Grasso up and dump her on her head as long as she can get inside. But she's really raw. Like, I can't say that enough. She's really raw. I think she's got 8 pro fights total. So if Alexa Grasso can use her jab to keep distance and she can strike from range while defending takedown attempts, then she could easily outbox Macy Barber. But my issue is I don't feel great about her being able to do that. Initially, like earlier in the week, I was leaning towards Alexa Grasso, but watching Grasso's fight against Carla Esparza, who everybody knows is a journeyman wrestler, has good takedowns, it was pretty easy for Carla Esparza to get in on those legs and take Grasso down repeatedly. Now, granted, Barber is not as polished as Carla Esparza at takedown attempts, but she's going to make up for it in just pure power and pure strength advantage. So after watching the tape all day today, I came out the other side thinking that Barber is probably going to be able to get Grasso against the cage and take her down. And if that happens, she's probably going to find a way to end it by ground and pound. Now, I really wanted to get on Alexa Grasso here. I like her. I love her stand-up a lot, especially when she's fighting behind a good jab. But I just don't think she's going to be able to stop the takedown attempts. And if that's the case, I have to pick Maycee Barber. Now, you can get a dog price on her at plus 108. But I think if Maycee Barber gets her down to the ground and has time to work with 3.5 or 4 minutes left in the round, then she's probably going to stop Grasso by strikes. And if that's the case, you can get Maycee Barber by TKO as a flyer at plus 500. I think that's probably worth a flyer because if she gets her down to the ground, like I just said, with a lot of time to work, then she's going to get a stoppage because she's too strong. So the pick, Barber plus 108, and dabble in the TKO KO prop at plus 500. I don't know if it's going to make the sheet. It hasn't yet. It could, but that's the direction that I lean in the co-main event. All right, one more fight to go, boys. Main event, UFC 258. Kamaru Usman, Gilbert Burns. Let's see what the current odds are. Current odds, Kamaru Usman minus 270. Gilbert Burns plus 230-ish. Now, I went back and looked. I have backed Kamaru Usman in 9 straight fights. I have also backed Gilbert Burns in his last 6 fights. I was high on Gilbert Burns before this run started. I got on at the right time, and he won all 6. So who do you go with in this fight? Well, I think the first thing that needs to be said is Kamaru Usman is a champion on a 16-fight win streak, I think. So he deserves to be the favorite. Let's start there. He should be the favorite. Now, what the question becomes is how big of a favorite should he be? And where does the value flip to the other side? In my opinion, I don't think that Kamaru Usman should be bigger than a $2 favorite in this fight, which would make the comeback on Gilbert Burns somewhere around plus 170. Now, the current odds have Burns at plus 240 in some spots. And in my opinion, that's just too big of a favorite. What do we know? Let's see what we know. Let's pull up the stats. We know that both of these guys have been sparring with each other for years. We know that. They were training partners for a long time. They know each other inside and out. But who has the advantage? I have to say Gilbert Burns has a built-in advantage because Usman has never defended a belt against anybody that has ever known him as good as Gilbert Burns does. So how does Gilbert Burns, who is playing with house money right now, because it's his first shot at a title, he's trying to win the belt for the first time, he knows Usman as well as anybody knows him. The advantage of them being partners in training, practice, and sparring sessions for years has to be with Gilbert Burns. It has to be. Now, we're not going to know really who owned each other in those practice sessions until we see them fighting. But one of these guys knows they own the other, right? And my guess is that we probably find it out early in the fight, somewhere inside the first round. We're going to be like, oh, he knows him well, way better than the other guy knows him, right? Now, we know that Usman is the best wrestler at 170 pounds. And we know that Usman has a decent stand-up game and some decent power, right? But we also know that Gilbert Burns is the best in the world inside the cage at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at 170 pounds, and it's not even close. So, plus, if you really take a look at the last 6 fights from Gilbert Burns, his striking game has evolved substantially in that time. He's going to carry more power, and he's got faster hands. So if Usman tries to take Burns down and ride him out on the ground like he did to Tyron Woodley, like he did to Jorge Masvidal, he's going to have to deal with constant submission attempts from Gilbert Burns off his back. Now, could Usman still win the fight and not get submitted? Yeah, of course he can. But he's going to at least be faced with a different challenge that he hasn't had to deal with the past few fights. So all in all, Usman knows that his path to victory is going to be clinching Burns against the cage, getting him tired, working the takedowns until he sucks the life out of him like he does to everybody else. On his best day, can he do that to Gilbert Burns and defend his title? Yeah, definitely. And that's why he deserves to be the favorite. Now, however, if Burns can keep his distance and the majority of this fight is on the feet, like the Colby Covington fight, then I really do think that Usman can get cracked and dropped. I went back, I watched that Covington fight again, and it's amazing how many times that Colby Covington landed clean on Kamaru Usman in exchanges. He did it at an alarming rate to the point where if Colby Covington had any power at all, he probably would have dropped Usman. If Gilbert Burns gets those clear looks like Colby Covington did in that fight, I just don't see. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand that Kamaru Usman has an iron chin, and it's pretty much never cracked once. But there are not many people that he has fought that's going to carry the power that Gilbert Burns is going to carry in this fight. And Usman is just too gettable on the feet. Masvidal had his chances, but he was too tired. And Colby Covington just has no punching power at all. So I really think that if Gilbert Burns gets clean looks, I think he can end the fight. Now, my hope is that Usman thinks that he can knock Burns out and this stays on the feet because they don't like each other. There's some kind of bad blood there. They wouldn't shake hands at the weigh-ins. Dana White had to pull them apart. So the last time that Kamaru Usman had bad blood, he stood on his feet with Colby Covington for 5 rounds to make a point. If we're lucky enough for him to do that against Gilbert Burns, I really think that Kamaru Usman can get dropped. I really do. So, at the end of the day, I'm going to pick Gilbert Burns here. I just think that the odds are not a fair representation of the chance that Gilbert Burns has to win this fight. Now, I have 2 plays on the spreadsheet. Not going to say what they are totally. But the direction that I'm going to be looking towards is Gilbert Burns. All right, that's it, boys. That's your UFC 258 main card breakdown. Went through the 5 fights. Told you what direction I was looking. I will definitely have a play or 2 more on the spreadsheet for Run Pure Bet subscribers. I'll be on for subscribers all night tomorrow night for UFC 258. I'll be on for subscribers all day Sunday for the Daytona 500. And other than that, I'm out. I'll catch you tomorrow.